We talked a lot about running backs yesterday on the Morning Pit and about how that position is maybe a little bit thin and what your concern level is. And it was actually an interesting conversation that came out of that on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. We were, because the headline of yesterday's Morning Pit was, how concerned are you about the running backs? Or are you concerned about the running backs or something like that? And there was actually a mix of answers. Like a number of people were sort of like me. They're like, just can't get worked up about running backs. It'll probably be fine. Plus, they've got a really good player leading the charge. So, it should be okay. And then a few others were like, no, I'm majorly concerned. Like even last year, if you look at Pitt, where Pitt was heading into the 2024 season, you had Rodney Hammond coming back. You had Desmond Reed as a transfer who had been really productive in his previous stops. Derek Davis had played some. Daniel Carter had played some. You had backs who had experience. You had guys who had played, before you were getting to the freshmen or, walk-ons or guys who had very minimal playing time. Whereas this year you've got Reed, and that's it. You've got Juelz Goff with 17 carries and Derek Davis on the shelf with an injury. We'll see what becomes of him. And then 3 true freshmen who haven't played. And so it's a little bit of a different situation. It is a bit thinner than it was a year ago. So there were mixed results, mixed reactions and feedback and responses to that question about the running backs. But I thought we'd take it a little bit, take that question a little bit broader today, because I actually wrote in the 3-2-1 column last Friday about what I thought was the thinnest and deepest positions, the thinnest and thickest positions on the roster. And I said that running back was probably the thinnest. But what about on the other side? What's the thickest position on the roster? What's the deepest position? Let's just go with deepest. It's weird to say thickest. I just picture it as being THICCEST, and just not going to go there. That's not really my territory to write or even say or think things like that. So the deepest position on the team and the thinnest positions on the team, and just sort of a general overall discussion about depth with these positions and maybe which position on the team is poised to take the biggest step forward, which I think sort of overlaps with some of the conversation about depth. If you're talking about where it was last year and where it's been and where it could get this year, I think there's one position that stands out as having a big chance to take a jump forward. I should probably make this the headline. It should be about, which position group is set to make the biggest jump in 2025. And so maybe we'll make that the headline and sort of tuck a little conversation about depth inside there as well. So where's Pitt deep, where's Pitt thin, and which position group is set to make the biggest leap forward in 2025? All that and more on today's Morning Pit. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, Wednesday edition of the Morning Pit, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website below, Panther-Lair.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Pitt football, Pitt basketball, Pitt recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and message boards to hang out with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are hanging out talking about Pitt sports on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, our video channel right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's where we have all of our Pitt video content, these daily morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday. Our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night, that's tonight at 8:30 p.m. with me and Jim Hammett hanging out, talking with you about all things Pitt sports, football, basketball, recruiting, transfers, whatever else you got. You jump in the chat screen over there. We take your comments and questions. We talk to each other. We answer your questions. We react to your comments and try to have an engaging hour of Pitt-centric conversation. So hopefully you can tune in for that tonight. And then, of course, also at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, we have video interviews and post-game shows and press conferences and all kinds of things like that. All kinds of Pitt video content that you as a Pitt fan want to be tuned in for. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then you won't miss any of that content. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like, subscribe, make me happy. All right, depth. Position-wise, where does Pitt have depth? Where does it thin this year? Obviously, we talked yesterday about the running backs. I think the running back room is probably one of the thinnest positions on the team, even though they've got numbers. If you include Derek Davis, they've got, 6 scholarship backs, plus Justin Cook, who had a pretty good spring camp as a walk-on transfer receiver who moved to running back. You got 6, 7 guys there. So numbers-wise, they're okay at running back. It's just, as we talked at length about yesterday, it's that experience issue. Not a lot of it to go around, and you'd like to have a little bit more. Freshmen and unproven, inexperienced players can excel at running back. You'd just like to have a little bit more experience on the roster and have guys who are ready to, who have shown it in the past, right? Doesn't mean they can't do it. It's just you would like to have that seen. Where else is Pitt lacking in depth? It's interesting, and this is one of the positions I'm probably most confident about for 2025, but in terms of depth, I'd probably say the next thinnest position after running back, it's kind of linebacker. And it's weird to say that, and maybe I shouldn't put this number 2. There might be another spot that I'm also sort of oddly confident about that I would put there. Linebacker, they obviously have a great starting 3, right? Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles and Braylon Lovelace. You have one All-American, another guy whose stat line was every bit as good as Lewis's was. And then, and Braylon Lovelace, who I think has been the third of that trio of guys, but still every bit as good as, or almost as good as them, I would say, and played really well and should be good this year. There's just not a lot of experience depth behind them. They're really good, and I actually think the depth is pretty good too. It's just not very experienced. Jeremiah Marcelin and Cam Lindsey, and even Jaden Bonsu, if you want to count him as part of the top 6 after he transferred from Ohio State. But I mean, even at Ohio State, he never got on the field. So if we're counting him, you've got minimal snaps for those 3 guys. Now, I think they could be pretty good. I'm really high on Lindsey and Marcelin. I even like, Davin Bruton and the freshman that they brought in this year. Bruton's a redshirt freshman, a second-year player like Lindsey and Marcelin. I think they've done really well recruiting linebackers over the last couple of years, but there's not a lot of experience there. And that's a minor quibble because I think the talent level's really high. I would sort of say the same thing for cornerback. I don't think they don't have a lot of experience depth at corner. You've got Rashad Battle and Tamon Lynham. Those guys have played. Rashawn Murray coming in as a transfer has played a lot at a lower level. And so actually that's a decent amount of experience there. Those guys, that's 3 guys who have all played a lot of football. And I'm really high on Shadarian Harrison, the most improved defensive player this spring. Like, he's going to be really good this year. I think some of the younger corners, Nigel Maynard and David Pritchard, and Sean Lee, the true freshman, I think they've got a lot of talent throughout that group. Not a ton of experience, but a little bit more experience relative to how many guys you're actually going to use than the linebackers have. I guess I should probably make a mention of the tight ends here as one of the thinnest positions on the team. But, I mean, do you just kind of feel like tight end? It's like it's never been a strength under this staff outside of like 2021. It was the only year it was really a strength under Pat Narduzzi. I mean, it was pretty decent in 2015 when they had J.P. Holtz and Scott Orndorff. And Orndorff was productive in 2016 as well. But by and large, like this staff, like Pat Narduzzi era recruiting at tight end has just been almost a complete washout, with little bits here and there. And they've tried a bunch of transfers. They've tried JUCO players, Gavin Bartholomew, maybe, arguably the best tight end of the Narduzzi era. And maybe he's not, but I mean, top 3 guy, I would say, just never took off. And there's probably a lot of reasons why the tight ends haven't taken off in this, in the last 10 years, but it's just not, it hasn't been a position of strength. It hasn't been a good position for Pitt. And so, like we said here, we're talking about what are the thinnest positions on the team. I don't even think of the tight ends because I just sort of generally don't think about them at all. There's just nothing there. And anything you get out of that position just feels like a bonus. So I don't mean, it's okay to punt on the tight ends, but, it's like, okay, let's see. What are the thinnest positions on the team? And tight end is like, we're thin. It's like, please sit down. The adults are talking now. It's just, it almost feels like an afterthought. And I think that's even more so in this new offense, in this Cade Bell offense. It feels like an afterthought. Now watch, I was going to say something like silly, like, oh, watch, Jake Overman will go out and catch 70 passes this year. I mean, that's not going to happen. It's not. It's just not going to be a focal point because if the tight ends and even into an H-back type of role weren't a focal point last year with Gavin Bartholomew, then I just don't think it's going to happen this year. So we'll set them aside. Any of these conversations, like, we know tight end is a weakness. We know tight end is thin, and it's probably never going to get any better. It's 10 years. We have 10 years of evidence that it's not going to get any better. I could probably do a whole episode on tight end. I mean, like, they had the 2017 class where they signed 3 tight ends. They signed Tyler Sear, Charles Reeves, and Grant Kerrigan. They tried to attack it with numbers. They've taken a bunch of transfers at tight ends. I mean, I've lost count of how many transfer tight ends they've had. Let's see if we can try. Chris Clark, Will Gregg, Matt Flanagan. What was that one guy's name? Nakia Griffin-Stewart. That's like 4, right? Obviously, Lucas Kroll is 5. Daniel Morega, but he was a JUCO guy. So, we could go back and forth. Jake Overman, that's 6 transfers that they've taken at tight end. Was there another one? Am I forgetting someone? And that's like 6 tight end transfers, plus the guys they've tried to recruit who haven't worked out, plus the JUCO, Daniel Morega they brought in. He caught a touchdown pass, I think, against Miami in 2020. I want to say it was like the first touchdown by a Pitt tight end since like 2015 or 16 or something. That actually might be an accurate stat. Feel free to repeat that. I think that's true. But either way, it's just been a black hole. So, wasting too much time here. We got more important things to talk about. On the flip side, some of the deepest positions on the team, and I actually wrote this in the 3-2-1 column last week, that sort of pound for pound quarterback might be the deepest position on the team, or one of the deepest positions on the team. I mean, when you consider you have a starter, a returning starter, a guy who went 7-3 in 10 games as a starter, who looked really good. One of his backups, maybe his top backup, is a guy who has multiple years of experience playing in this offense and transferred in this offseason. And then the other backup, maybe the number 2, maybe the number 3, is a really talented freshman who's drawing some high praise, for his play in spring camp. And so it's only 3 guys, but you can only play one, at any given time, and you're going to have one that you're mostly going to stick with. In terms of the depth, again, pound for pound, quarterback might be one of the deepest positions on the team, if not the deepest position on the team. But I'll tell you what spot really intrigues me, and what spot I think might be poised through its depth and its talent to take the biggest jump in 2025, to go from 2024 to 2025, an improvement maybe more than any other. And it's the defensive tackles. Now, the defensive tackle is a weird spot, particularly, you kind of, it sort of feels like it's an extreme, right? You get one extreme or another. You either get a guy who goes off and goes crazy and has double-digit sacks, like, Kalijah Kancey. I don't know if he had double-digit sacks. He had double-digit tackles for loss, but like is a playmaker, getting into the backfield and making a lot of plays like Kalijah Kancey, Jalen Twyman, Aaron Donald. You go back, to Mick Williams. I mean, they've had a good run over the past 15, 16, 17 years of defensive tackles, but it's like 4 guys. It's 4 guys over the course of those 17 years or however much it is. So it's a bit of a rarity. You still don't get those guys coming along all that often. And for Pitt, and probably for most schools, when you don't have that big standout guy, you kind of don't get anything. It really feels like all or nothing. You don't have sort of, Shakir Soto was pretty solid after he moved from defensive end to defensive tackle, whatever that was, 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. He started producing, but they're just, you get extremes. You don't get guys who put up average sort of production, and maybe part of that is because they had that long run of multiple years where it was Devin Danielson and David Green and Tyler Bentley. Nice guys, hard workers, ate up a lot of blocks, didn't exactly make a lot of plays in the backfield, And so you have that kind of extreme situation, and Pitt has been stuck in that lower end of the extreme since Kalijah Kancey left. So basically for the last 2 seasons, they just haven't gotten much out of the defensive tackles. I think this year they've got a real chance to make an impact, and a positive impact, from that defensive tackle position. Now, we talked about this last year, that I think the defensive tackle position had the highest percentage of former 4-star recruits out of any position group on the team. Like they were all like star-studded guys. Jasir Whittington and Isaiah Neal and Francis Brew, but then Nikai Johnson and Elliott Donald, Nick James. You have all these former 4-star guys And it didn't really work out last year. And I think it didn't work out for a few reasons. One, I think Johnson and Donald were probably overrated coming out of high school. Johnson moved from defensive end to defensive tackle. They felt like that'd be a good move, but it didn't really work out. Elliott Donald probably was just overrated coming out of high school. But the other thing was, some of those other guys I mentioned, Isaiah Neal, Francis Brew, Jasir Whittington, they were all young, first and second year players. This year, I think there's a better chance of those guys really making an impact and putting up some impressive numbers because they're all a year older. Isaiah Neal is going to be a third-year player this year. Whittington and Brew will be second-year players. Add them in with Sean Fitzsimmons, who I think, when he's healthy, can really be a disruptive force out there. And then Nick James, who looks like he might just be like a solid kind of guy, help stop the run and, maybe eat up blockers and create opportunities for the linebackers. Overall, I think this group of defensive tackles has a chance to make an impact at controlling the line of scrimmage, which creates opportunities for the defensive ends and the linebackers to get after it, and also getting into the backfield and making big plays on their own. Randy Bates really praised that group this spring. When we talked to Randy Bates near the end of spring camp, he talked about how good he thinks the defensive tackles are going to be, and I'm kind of with him. Whereas in the past, we got caught up in the star rankings for, Elliott Donald and Nakai Johnson and those guys. I really think Francis Brew, Jasir Whittington, Isaiah Neal are talented young defensive tackles who are going to make an impact. I think Whittington could be one of the breakout players this year. I think Brew, even though he played last year, could be one of the breakout players this year. And then I think Isaiah Neal is poised for a big year. I think he's a guy who has maybe been a bit erratic in his play in the past, but I think he can get that, as he grows and gets more mature and gets older, I think he can channel that energy and be really, really good. So I think, if you're looking at positions that could take a big step from last year to this year, I think defensive tackle might take one of the biggest. And I think they're deep. I think they're talented. I don't know if they're the deepest position on the team, but I'd say they might be like top 3. I think they've got a real chance to make a big impact, which of course would help the linebackers, it would help the defensive ends, and help the defense overall, which is always a good thing. So keep an eye on the defensive tackles. I think this is a year where I think the group can return to making a big impact, putting up a good stat line collectively, and maybe having it spread a little bit among 2 or 3 or 4 guys, as opposed to just 2022 it was all Kalijah Cansey, 2019 it was all Jalen Twyman. And so on, back through the years, I think you could see Brew, Whittington, Neal, Fitzsimmons all putting up some pretty strong numbers in 2025. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those guys can do. I think that's a promising group. And like I say, they could take as big a step forward into 2025 from last year as any other position group on the team. We'll see. What's your thoughts on that? You think the D tackles can make the biggest step, or you got your eye on a different position group? And what is the deepest position group on this roster? And do you have any thoughts on the tight end situation? I don't think there's anything to say about the tight ends anymore. All right. Make sure you like this video and subscribe. Leave your comments here on YouTube or over on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget our live stream tonight at 8:30 p.m. We will be live, me and Jim Hammett, for this week's Panther-Lair show right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe. And check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. Thanks for tuning in today. Hope you've had a great week so far. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll talk to you tonight for the live stream and be back for another Morning Pitt tomorrow morning right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.